Hello, this is Abby.
Dear Abbey, this is gonna be a long one.
Oh boy.
Dear Abbey, how do you tell the difference between a new exciting crush and a rebound?
Does it matter?
Dear Abbey.
Dear Abbey.
Dear Abbey.
Welcome to our little corner of the internet. This is the Dear Abbey podcast. I hope you stay and hang out with us. See you in a sec. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Dear Abbey. Today is a very special day because it's our 100th episode. I went a little bit crazy with the decor. I'm so excited. I think it's insane that I've done 100 episodes because I think, what the heck have I been? What the heck do I talk about? How have I thought of that many different things, even though I probably talk about the same thing every episode? And in regards to that, thank you for listening anyways, even though I probably repeat myself a million times. But what is life other than repetition and learning the same things over and over and over again? So to celebrate the 100th episode, I'm still going to do normal dubs, L's, everything in between of life updates, and I think what this podcast has done for me and meant for me. And then also, I never really share reviews or talk about reviews, but I've gotten really sweet messages since I've started this podcast, and I wanted to read some of my favorite ones. And I'm not going to name the names. I don't know if people want me to do that or not, but I'm just going to read off of either reviews on Apple Podcasts or YouTube comments. And I just am really grateful, and I wanted to celebrate myself today because it's a lot of work to do a podcast. And I think I've just been on autopilot since my divorce, honestly, if we're going to get into it. And I just felt like I had so much energy and so much to prove almost. And so I started this and I did all of these big moves, big changes. And it's crazy that it's been like almost 2 years now. I think more than 2 years now of the podcast, or a little bit less. I don't know. It's just been a lot of change, a lot of growth, a lot of learning, a lot of meeting really beautiful, smart, intelligent, creative people and listeners who have listened since the beginning. That's crazy if you have. I feel like I see you if you do, and I hope you can recognize my heart all the time. And I hope you can recognize my heart if you're new or old. I'm not right all the time. I'm not perfect. I probably say insensitive, dumb, ignorant, naive things. And so I'm just grateful for people that still listen. So I'm celebrating myself because I do want to give myself some credit, because it's a lot of work to do a podcast by yourself and to edit and post, and it's just a lot of work. And I'm grateful to myself for taking a risk and investing in myself, and whatever it turns into, I'm okay with, because I'm just proud of how far I've come with it. Yeah, so we're gonna have a fun episode. It's gonna be a little bit unstructured chaos a bit. So we're going to do life updates and then talk a little bit more about the podcast, then go into reviews and some of my favorite comments. Then I wanted to talk a little bit about some other things, and then we'll do a Dear Abbey, and then that'll be today's episode. And then next week it'll just be a normal, boring episode. Also, rude of me to make it all about me first. Happy Thanksgiving. I hope everyone's having a beautiful Thanksgiving with their family or friends, or even if it's a cozy evening by yourself or just you and a loved one. Thanksgiving is as special as you make it. Sometimes I just let everybody else make it special and I just am along for the ride. But with everything in life, the more you put into it, the more you get out of it. And family occasions and family get-togethers are what you make it. And I don't know, I think for me, it's more empowering to go into a situation being like, okay, what do I want out of this? And what do I want to give into this? And that way you have, I think, a little bit more control over your enjoyment of the whole thing. But I also know that vacations and family gatherings can be very triggering for OCD and other things in life. So you're not the same person as you were when you were younger, or when you were a teen, or even a year ago. And you have more tools now. You don't have to be, sometimes you feel like you're put back into a box, and that's not really due to that many people around you. Sometimes I've realized that I put myself back into a box because I think that's what other people expect of me, but I actually don't expect that from anyone to be be the same person. So anyways, I don't know. So dub for this week has been, well, it's a dub and an L at the same time. I was not feeling well. I woke up feeling like I was going to throw up. Good news is I didn't. And the other good news is because I didn't feel good, I stayed home from work and I just worked from home, which is always nice to just stay in and not have to worry about traffic and driving. So that was definitely a dub. The L, the second L of the week, was I just had a bit of a panic day in regards to my medication. I still get a lot of anxiety taking my bipolar depression medication. Because I've been feeling better, I'm like, oh, I don't need my meds anymore. But I know that that's very classic to think, oh, like I'm fine now, so I probably never needed the meds, or I'm probably fine to come off the meds. And from what I understand, that's not how it works. And of course it's not, because you needed the meds in the first place. So maybe until I find an alternative thing to do to help, that's proven, it has significantly decreased the amount of times I've had depressive episodes. And that has been amazing, because that was kind of controlling my life. It's like I was just waiting for the next depressive episode is kind of how my life felt for a while. All that being said, I just sometimes get in my head about it, because I see people's opinions about being on medication and not being on medication, and you should and you shouldn't do this, and you know, people who are educated on both ends think two different things, and then people who aren't educated also have an opinion, which doesn't really make sense. I think it's just something that has a lot of noise, but I'm really grateful for my medication, and I think just because it affects my gut health sometimes and my bacteria overgrowth thing that I talked about last week, that's why I got in my head, because it's just frustrating. But that being said, I think I just need to accept that I'm someone that I need medication, and that's actually really helped me, and there's nothing wrong with me. When you're someone that takes medication, there's nothing wrong with you, and for some reason it's like I believe that in other people, but for me, I shouldn't need it, because I should be eating all the right things and I should be doing all the right things so that I don't need medication. I just think that's another trick, honestly, to keep you stuck in fear. So I am learning to accept being on medication for however long I'm going to be. I don't know why I'm so stubborn with it. I think it's an ego thing, honestly, which is silly. But yeah, that's been an L for this week. So I wanted to talk about the evolution of my podcast and the different setups, the different ideas that I might bring back, and just kind of reminisce a little bit, because that's what this episode's about. So yeah, I'm going to talk about myself as I normally do on my podcast. And just so you know, you guys, I don't go around talking about myself all the time to everybody. My fiance, yes, I'll ask him a million questions too, though, but I do talk a lot to him. To everybody else, I really try not to talk that much about myself. So I understand that it probably is perceived that I talk about myself all the time and I only care about myself. Sometimes I regrettably do think about myself too much. But I mean, honestly, most conversations I have, I don't like to talk that much about myself. I just like to listen. Not saying I never do, but I'm just saying I don't talk about myself as much as I talk about myself on the podcast. Okay, the first setup that I had was when I was in California. I started the podcast in California. I had the idea when I was in Arizona. To be honest, I don't remember why I wanted to start the podcast. Like, I can't remember the day that I decided I should do a podcast. I believe the overarching idea was, I know there's more people out there that have OCD. I don't really, there's not a lot of podcasts that are kind of just someone talking candidly about OCD that I knew of at the time. Now that I've dove into that world, there are some, but I just wanted to be like a younger 20-year-old girl that talked about it, because I just know a lot of people out there could relate, and it would be nice to have a little community that's safe to talk about stuff with OCD, because it can be very taboo and create a lot of shame. And so I started the podcast to just talk about that stuff and open up and just create a little safe space on the internet. So first setup, I was in a house living with 3 girls, and I didn't know any of them when I moved in. When I look back on my old YouTube videos, I kind of missed that setup where there were lights behind me and my microphone sucked, but it was good enough. And I really did what they say to do to just start, even though you don't have everything you need and it's not going to be perfect. I really just went full throttle with not a lot of good equipment and just had fun doing it. Just thought, sure, let's see how this goes. I kind of miss that setup, honestly. I miss the pink gaming chair. I miss the pink massive headphones that I'd wear. I missed kind of the bad microphone. I'm not going to get that back, don't worry. But I miss not having to hold my microphone, which I want to do that again someday because I think it makes sound sometimes. So I'm sorry about that. And also, by the way, I also miss the angle and just the vibe of the beginning of my podcast. And it's been really tempting to bring that back because I think it's just more cozy and it's more like this setup's more mature because we like being mature. I like maturing. I like changing. But also, I do like the coziness because I still do sit in a gaming chair for hours a day and I'll game with friends and family. So it's not like I don't do that stuff anymore. It's just more adult looking. But then I think who freaking cares? There's not like an adult looking thing. It doesn't have to look adult, whatever adult means. Also, at the beginning of when I started my podcast, I used to do, I think I did dubs and L's, but they were like only mental health. And they would be other people's dubs and L's. I changed the lights. So I had lights on in that room, like gaming lights, LED lights. And I would change the color of the lights depending on what segment we were in of the episode. So if we were doing life updates, it would be blue or something. If we were doing Dear Abbey, it'd be pink or whatever. That was such a cute idea. And I just stopped that because my LED lights, like once I moved, I just didn't have the same setup. It wasn't the same vibe. So I couldn't do it. But I could try that here. It would just be a little bit different. But I also miss sitting at my computer because I could look at stuff. And that was kind of nice. It just felt like I was streaming. So it was just calming to me more than this. This feels too real, too personal. I like this though. I do like the setup. It's way more professional looking. And so that's why I went for this look now. But if I have a perfect setup in my head and one day maybe I can execute it. But until then, I'm fine with where we're at. I kind of want to bring this back too because I used to play a game or do something kind of more fun at the end of every episode because now I feel like I'm so serious all the time. I'm just kidding, but I am. And it was kind of nice to have a little fun game at the end of every episode, but I ran out of games fast. So I was like, I think I just got to pick the same game and just do different variations of it because it was a lot to think of a brand new game to play. I did one where it was like you have to say, what is it called when it's hard to say? Like, oh my gosh, forget it. I quit the podcast. She sells seashells by the seashore, whatever that's called. I did those. I made a D&D character. I just did a bunch of stuff like that. Here's the thing. I also want to do 5,000 things. Like I have 5,000 ideas that I want to do on the podcast, but it just wouldn't make any sense all over the place. I just have a lot of things that I want to do. And that's exciting because who says I can't do them? But I think I just have to plan accordingly and also learn how to execute it in a way that is not super chaotic and makes sense. The second setup was when I moved into Keaton's apartment, and that was not the same vibe at all because he didn't have lights. It was a rental, so I didn't really want to set up the lights, and it wasn't even my own apartment, and we were dating seriously, but it was not like we had been together for years at that point. And that's when I had one of my favorite episodes that I did, which was I talked about your body and getting ready for summer, but not in the same way that you see a lot of the time on the internet, which isn't bad. Like when you want to get your body ready for the summer, that's not inherently a bad thing at all. But I just wanted to talk about the healthy parts of our bodies that a lot of people shame or a lot of people make you feel bad for having, like, you know, your little pouch on your belly and having belly fat, and how women should have a little bit more fat on their bodies. It's healthy. I just wanted to cover those things, and I really enjoyed making that episode because I researched a lot about different parts of your body, and I found a lot of different resources, and it was just kind of nice to actually read the facts and read what science and discovery has said about certain parts of the woman's body that people misunderstand. One being a common, and let me remind you, a common misconception, and this is one that I talked about. A common misconception is, especially from men, think that if a woman has smaller boobs, that she can't make milk for her babies, or that she doesn't provide as much milk for your babies. And from what I remember after researching, that's 100% not true. The size of your breast, that's fatty tissue, and your ducts that actually hold and store the milk have nothing to do with your breast size. So you could have small boobs and you can provide just as much milk as someone who has huge boobs. That's science for you. But that's a common misconception. Like, men will think, oh, she has big hips, she has big boobs, she's more womanly. And that's just not true, because a woman is XX chromosomes. And so that is a woman. And so I think it's just a very common misconception. And men, even if that's a natural thing to think, and they think they're right because it's like natural or whatever, doesn't make it true. People have natural thoughts about, oh, I'm naturally attracted to bad boys. Okay, that's natural. Doesn't mean that's the best thing for you, because bad boys are bad boys. So you might be drawn to them for some reason, but statistically speaking, they're probably not going to treat you the best. So what we naturally gravitate towards doesn't always mean it's the best thing for us. Anyways, I loved that episode. It was very eye-opening to me. Another episode that was really fun was when I had my sister on. What is the role of a sister? We talked about sisterhood, having younger siblings, all of that fun stuff. I just love having guests on. Like, I loved having Keaton on, my fiance. I had my little brother on who has OCD. I want to do an episode soon and have another guy on and talk about mental health for men. And so I would love to have an episode about men and mental health and talk more about that in depth from a male's perspective. My most viewed episode was my engagement episode, when I told the story of getting engaged. That was obviously a great episode. Very fun to share. Okay, next, on to the next era of my podcast was just when I moved into my studio that I'm in now. So my first couple episodes I did sitting on a white couch against the same wall. Also, that couch was my bed, so I had to open that bed up and close it every single morning and night, and it was a lot because there were very heavy pillows. It was a heavy bed. It hurt my back, so I literally had to buy this bed because my back was hurting. And then I moved my office space, because I was still working from home at this point, and my desk into the closet in my studio. So I have a pretty decent sized closet, honestly, in the studio apartment, but it still wasn't roomy enough to really have a comfortable desk in there with lighting and everything, but I did it for a while. I am tempted to move my stuff in there again, not to record, but just as an office space. And Keaton's moving in here once we're married, and so we're going to be in a studio together, which should be fun for a while, until I want to rip his face off. Yeah, it should be a fun time. But yeah, so there's a couple episodes of me sitting in my closet with the same little camera setup. I didn't know how to work the camera. I didn't know how to work the microphone. It was a horrible, like, $20 microphone, and it was super poppy. Like, I didn't know how to edit. I didn't know how to make content or do anything that's like advertising for the podcast. To be honest, I still kind of don't. It's hard for me to dedicate time to it because, I don't know, it's just hard. At the beginning, I think I just needed to buy a new battery, but my camera would die mid-recording. And sometimes I would just finish the podcast and there wouldn't be video because I was like, I'm so annoyed with this, just whatever. But then sometimes I would stop recording, take a pause. I would stop whatever train of thought I was on. And then I'd wait until my camera had either cooled down because maybe it was reheated, or not reheated, it was overheated, or my card was full, or I had forgot to charge the battery. So that was very annoying to deal with. And it's really nostalgic and cool to think back to the beginning of where I'd mess a bunch of stuff up. And I still do every once in a while, but I've kind of learned how to do podcasting, at least actual podcasting part of it. And hopefully I'm getting better at it. But when I started, I really was just figuring it all out while, what do they say? People say this at work all the time. I really was building the plane as we were flying it. I just think it's super cool, and I'm super proud of myself for pushing through and just doing it, not knowing what it would amount to and if anyone would listen or if anyone would care or resonate. It's also scary when you talk about taboo themes with OCD. You just don't know how people are going to receive it, and I still don't know how people receive it, but I just know that there are people out there that do receive it well, and I'm just grateful for that. Okay, the next setup was just the white couch out here again. And then the last setup obviously is the one I'm in now, where I'm on the bed, same apartment. Yeah, I'm excited to see what the next setup will be when we ever move out of this place. Okay, now that we did a full rundown of the history of the podcast, I wanted to read some of the most thoughtful reviews I've ever gotten. Okay, so this one was written in September of this year, and this is on Apple Podcast, and I really needed to hear this one that day because sometimes it is kind of overwhelming to do a podcast talking about mental illness, and yeah, sometimes I just really get in my head about it. Okay, day one listener here. I highly recommend this podcast. Dear Abbey is a low stimulation podcast that educates on mental health and is very authentic. Abby keeps it real with the highs and lows of life, and the show feels like a peek into her mind as she explores various topics and her thoughts on them. I recommend listening if you or a loved one have OCD, if you are interested in becoming more educated on the topic, or just want a dedicated time every week for having deep and introspective thoughts that can lead to self-awareness and improvement. Okay, I'm trying not to cry. Thank you for creating a safe place for my mind to slow down. Okay. I'm tough. I admire your eloquence and the way you are so true to yourself. I hear so much of myself in you, and that is not something I can say about a lot of people in podcasts. Oh my gosh. This podcast was one of the main things that helped me to identify in myself OCD-like traits after years of being only diagnosed with depression and anxiety, yet feeling there was something more wrong with my brain. Finally getting diagnosed has been life-changing. Thank you for voicing the silly, lighthearted thoughts you have, as well as dark, scary ones. Thank you for sharing about your faith and being bold and brave about what you believe. Overall, thank you for being so vulnerable. It makes me feel less alone and so seen. Then, let me know if you ever reopen the Discord chat or want to play Among Us, because I would die to game with you. I hope that your wedding planning is going smoothly. So happy for you and Keenan. I wish you all the best. I mean, you are so eloquent with your words, and that review came at a time where I just felt like this type of a podcast where it was low stimulation. It wasn't so loud, and not that that stuff's bad, and I like listening to that stuff every once in a while, but I appreciate when something is low stimulation, and I just felt like there wasn't a space for me. And so reading that was, and hearing that there are people that like that, and that was something that I am getting across, was so relieving, and it kind of renewed my love for doing this podcast, and that there is a space for people like us, like me, on the internet, but more importantly in this world, and that there's people who are like-minded, and that there's people who struggle like me all the time with their mental health, even if things get better. Yeah, just so you know, I really appreciated that, and I would literally read every single one of these reviews if we had a while, but I'm only going to read a couple of more because I don't want to toot my own horn. But also, the other thing is, sometimes I have a hard time explaining who would like to listen to my podcast. So your guys' reviews are so helpful to me to realize what people enjoy about this podcast, if anything, and then also what I am getting across and who my target audience would be, or who I should try to get to listen to this podcast that would enjoy it. So it's incredible that people have even left comments. Gosh, I knew I'd be emotional. Oh, shocker. Oh, shocker, you're emotional? Like, if you were to ask me like 2 years ago if I ever thought anyone would leave as many reviews as have been left for my podcast, I would not believe you. I don't want to ruin my makeup because it literally looked so good. And the little girl in me is so ecstatic. And for the little girl that thought there was something wrong with her for having these thoughts and feelings, but now has like a community of people and a community of listeners that relate. And if you don't relate, then at least you support, and you're wanting to learn for your loved ones or for yourself, or just in general about any kind of mental illness, and just hear some thoughts of people that struggle with it. Like, I'm just so overwhelmed and grateful in a world where everything's very competitive, and you can't help but, whatever career you're in, you compare yourself to people who are more successful. I always ground myself, and I'm so grateful that when I started the podcast, I had enough courage and faith just to do it without even really thinking too deeply, because I think if I thought too deeply, then I would probably not do it. And so it's the one thing I didn't try to think about too much. And I'm just really proud of myself. And I'm proud of everyone who's trying something new and did something that they were kind of scared to do, but wanted to do it just because you wanted to help, or you wanted to try something for yourself or do something for yourself. You should be very proud of yourself, and it's okay to take a moment and to really recognize how hard you've worked and just sit in that for a second. It's great to want to do more, but it's okay to just be super proud of yourself right now and look how far you've come. And you're still here, like you're still okay. You're still okay after everything you've experienced, and you're here now. I don't know, let yourself enjoy that. Let yourself be proud. I'm gonna read 2 more, and then that's it. And then I'll be done tooting my own horn. Okay, I think the title of this one is the most honest podcast I've listened to. I think it stops at the most honest podcast I've Okay, I will be honest. I have never written a review on a podcast, let alone so quickly. I started listening to Dear Abbey today, and I already love it. Okay, that does make me nervous, because hopefully you kept listening and you kept liking it. Hopefully it wasn't just a good episode, and then you were like, actually, this girl sucks. She's weird. She is so honest, and her podcasts feel like a real brain dump. Well, that's good. They quite literally are. You can feel her genuineness, and her thoughts make me feel more human. Okay. I don't need to cry. She truly pours her heart into these episodes and shares this podcast because she feels these things deeply and wants to inspire others. I have been left feeling motivated and validated, and have considered a lot of what was talked about in her podcast throughout the day. It's like a mix of listening to your therapist and your best friend in one. Okay, you tuned my horn a little bit. I'm gonna sob for a little bit after this episode is done. Also, my back is hurting. Okay, this was 1 year ago, and I remember this because I was very flattered. They said Emma Chamberlain vibes, which when I started it, I had actually never listened to an episode, but I could already tell her vibe because I used to watch her vlogs. So I kind of already knew what her vibe probably was on the podcast, but I love Emma Chamberlain, and I think she's very grounded and very cute and inspiring. I mean, I personally could go on and on and on and read all of these, but I will not. I will spare you. Well, thanks for listening to me talk about myself like that. You guys, I appreciate it. Yeah, I just wanted to do something special. And I also just wanted to eat a cake. Just so you guys know, I made this cake from scratch. Okay, no, I lied. Not the actual cake. I bought a cake, but then it was just a plain white cake. So I did all of, I did all of the decor, cute piping myself. I don't know why it's so fun. I bought piping stuff a while ago for a girls' night, and I still have all the stuff. And so I'll pipe cakes all the time now for fun when I have any event. And I'm getting pretty good at it. They're pretty cute. I mean, this is a basic vintage vibe that everyone does, but it is cute, and also it just puts a lot of frosting on there, so you get double the frosting. All in all, many more episodes that I will be making. I'm going to try to do this for as long as I possibly can. Let's do a Dear Abbey, and then we'll wrap this episode up. Yay, there's a voicemail. Let's do a voicemail. Hey, don't touch this freaking cake. Come on, you guys. Stay together. Also, of course, I have my good old anxiety bear here to say hi and to say thank you also for listening. Love him. It's quite literally been my support on this podcast for my back. So thank you. Time to dive in.
Dear Abby, first of all, thanks for your podcast and just all that you do to bring awareness to OCD and all the super fun stuff that comes along with it. Second of all, I just moved states like 9 months ago, and I have been having a very tough time making friends, meeting anyone my own age. I feel like there's nobody my age here, and I just was wondering if you had any advice on how to put yourself out there and make friends, because I am a very introverted, and it's not the easiest thing for me to just go up and talk to people, especially with anxiety and all of that. So I was wondering if you had any tips. Thanks.
Okay, well, a question about friends. I thought you guys knew me. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. First thing that comes to mind is just sometimes we got to rip the Band-Aid off, us introverts, and accept that we probably will say something that might sound stupid, say something that they don't fully understand, agree with. They might think we're dumb after the conversation. They might think whatever, I don't know. For me, that's always step one, to just accept that I can't even control how anyone perceives me. So however dumb I sound, if I'm awkward, if I like don't ask a normal question, I ask something weird, or if there's like too much of a pause, or I don't make eye contact enough, the amount of times I think, do people just feel so uncomfortable around me when they talk to me, because I just don't know how I'm perceived at all. So the best we can do is just try, and we might feel awkward, and that's just okay. Like, then we're just awkward sometimes. That's not the end of the world. You could be worse things than a little bit awkward in conversation or in group settings especially. I feel like it's extra hard to find people that you want to be around as an introvert, and it's not anything to do bad with other people. That's probably a misconception that extroverts have towards introverts, is we think we're better than other people, or we think we're cooler because we don't need as many people, or we don't want to hang out with as many people. And that's like not how, at least how I feel at all, nor do I think that's how most introverts feel. I think we just don't feel as overwhelmed when we're by ourselves, and when we're with other people, it just is there's a lot that's going on internally, like our reaction to it, and it's just, we can't keep it up for as long as you can. That's like all it is. That being said, it's not like introverts don't have friends, or introverts don't enjoy being with other people. Of course, that's why we try to make friends, because we do crave that deep relationship with people. We just are a little bit more sometimes picky on who we are ourselves with. A lot of people always tell me that I'm shy or I'm very quiet, and if I'm in a setting where I'm not extremely comfortable with everybody, I am the most quiet one in the group probably, and I try not to talk over anybody. If there's a conversation being had, I don't really want to join in, and I don't mind that. I actually like just listening sometimes. So for you, it's okay if sometimes you don't want to chime in. Unless you really, really want to, then you're just going to have to go for it, and maybe you say something dumb, but I think it's okay to not chime in if that's just what you are fine with, you know? Also, one-on-one, you should probably give yourself more credit, because you are probably very good at talking to people, and you are most likely very genuine and thoughtful, and you want it to be a good time, and you want to both get something good out of the hangout. Just play to your strengths as an introvert, making friends. As far as getting out there, if you're in school, or if you go to a church, or if you have anything that you do with a community, even if you have OCD and you've gone to support groups or thought about going to support groups, there's a lot of people that you could probably relate to that are in those groups that you could reach out to, if that's like allowed. I don't know. I think what we really don't enjoy is just the initial steps. It's just hard. The first part is the hardest part. The initial step you could take is just texting somebody if you have their number, or you can plan like a girls' night, and you just invite a bunch of girls over, or two girls over, and you just say something. Like, it can be very casual. You don't have to do anything crazy. Like, if you wanted to go to a certain farmer's market, you could text someone, or if you're in person with them and you kind of don't know them super well, but you're kind of like mutual friends and you want to get to know them more, then just invite them to a very casual event. I think slow and steady wins the race with friendships. And what I mean by that specifically is I think it's inaccurate always to demand like really good friends right now immediately. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes it does take a long time. But I think that's what's rich, is you build that up. And it might start as awkward conversations. And also, you always have to accept the possibility that you might invite someone and they might not want to really like hang out that much or be friends. That still happens as an adult, unfortunately. And that's okay. They probably will want to be friends with you, but they also might think that like they do not want that at all. And that's part of the process, unfortunately. But I feel like you can also catch a vibe. Sometimes, thankfully, we have people who are extroverts and they kind of gravitate towards more introverted people, so that we have a good balance, because I feel like those are the best friends, honestly. But as my older sister always says, you don't ever want to give off desperate energy of, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do all of this for you. What are you going to give me? It's just really take time to know people and understand them. Ask them a lot of questions. Be curious. Open yourself up to be curious about them. Open yourself up to be friends even, because sometimes we're like immediately closed off. It might take a while to warm up, but yeah, I think just be super curious and like actually curious and listen. And then conversations are easy when you really listen to what they're saying and you ask them questions. All right. Well, you guys, that was it for today's episode of Dear Abbey. I can't thank you enough, but I'm actually not going to try anymore because I'm sick of saying it. I hope everyone has a great Thanksgiving weekend. Black Friday shop, get on it, buy your Christmas presents, don't procrastinate because that never feels good for anybody. Get out there and write a rating and a review for me on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. You can comment, like, subscribe, and give me a follow on all social medias on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Thanks for supporting, as always. Thanks for listening. I hope you guys have a great day. Take yourself out this weekend. Have some fun. Be kind to yourself. Love you. Bye.
우회전 taking a ride to journey 눈치 보면서 들어가야 할 때 찾아 나머진 바빠 개설레임 밟고